Controversial opinion. Fidgety knives are overrated. The only time you're sitting there like, let me do over the top. Let me do over the back. You know, whatever, is when you're by yourself and you're only impressing yourselves. What's going on, guys? The real Sharif M here, and I've got a controversial opinion, and I wanted to kind of share it with you guys and see what you had to think about it. Basically, my view is fidgety knives and knives with tons of deployment methods and knives that just, you know, fall shut, all of this stuff, greatly overrated. I mean, massively. Like, look at how far my arm is stretching. Massively overrated. And I know that most of you are probably going to disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. So let me set up the camera in a stable position so I'm not constantly doing this, you know, and let me explain kind of where I'm coming from. So guys, basically the premise, or let's say the thesis of my argument, is that knives with like a ton of different deployment methods and fidget factor and all of this stuff, as well as hyper drop shutty sort of action, is just like a big ball of wax that have been sold to us by like the preeminent YouTubers. And like, I don't think that they necessarily serve any major function in our use of the knives, except for turning them into a plaything and less of a tool. One of my all-time favorite knives is this guy, the ZT-0640. It's based on an Emerson design, and guess what? It runs on washers. And look at this. Doesn't drop shut. Guess what? I have to close it with my hand. I gotta bring my finger from around and close it. And oh my God, it's still my favorite. You know, recently I picked up another Emerson, the EX100, and look at that. Oh my God. You mean it just didn't fall shut and didn't thwack back and forth, you know, like a paramilitary, you know, like this guy? Oh my God. It's not worth anything. No. It's a tool. It's a tool. And I actually come from the perspective that if you are knowingly in control of the blade the entire time that you're actuating it, you're actually safer than all this thwappy, you know, kind of BS that's being really like promoted nowadays. Part of what prompted this kind of conversation is recently, if you guys have been following any of the stuff that's in the Facebook groups and on Instagram, a lot of people are spine whacking their button locks and discovering that the button locks sometimes fail. And why did button locks become very like popular, right? Why all of a sudden the entire market was flooded with button locks? It was the fidget factor of the knives. And it ultimately led to knives that were less robust and less reliable, you know, than other locking methodologies. So, and I feel a lot of customers felt duped in a way, because like nobody really explained to them that button locks were never really intended to be, you know, for anything other than sort of like a light use knife platform. which is really unfortunate, because if you suddenly discover that the knife that you carry every day can't really or isn't really intended to do more than open boxes, but it's a 3.5-inch blade and, XYZ, I would imagine, you would feel like you were duped, especially when there are significantly better locking mechanisms out there, like a crossbar lock, like the one found in this giant mouse. Now, this is a fidgety knife, don't get me wrong, but I don't believe that access bar as a design was designed for fidget factor. It was to create a proprietary and superior locking mechanism similar to the compression lock, right? Compression lock offers a much stronger locking mechanism in general versus, let's say, a liner or a frame lock. And you can create an EDC-able size knife that actually has, tremendous strength. Same with the crossbar lock. And there is no better evidence to this fact than DBK, actually, Dutch Bushcraft knives. They have batoned bug outs. They have batoned bug outs, and the access lock has held up. It's a superior locking mechanism, not a fidget-based locking system. I feel that this, with the button locks, led people down a pathway where they ended up getting sold a ball of wax based on fidget factor, and they ended up with knives that were less than reliable. That's, to me, kind of problematic. At their core, knives are tools, guys. Like, they are. They're not fidget toys. If you want a fidget toy, like, there is a huge marketplace for fidget toys. The haptic coins and, spinners and all of this other stuff that I personally, I think is cool, but I can't justify spending the money on. And, if you really want something to fidget with, that's the perfect option. I mean, really, like, the fidgetability of a knife is really not socially acceptable if you think about it, right? Like, you can do it at home on the couch. You can do it in your garage while you're working on stuff, right? But you can't do it in public. You can't sit in, McDonald's or Taco Bell or at the bookstore or library or coffee shop or restaurant and sit there doing this without the cops being called on you.
FBI, open up!
Now, I have another angle to which I will address this from, right? When you start prioritizing fidgetability over just pure accessibility and usability of the knife, then you start perverting the proportions of the knife from a stylistic and a functional part of view, right? I'll give you an example. This guy, this is my KUBEY RUCKUS, right? And a lot of people have attributed this little nub here to being a front flipper, which you can. I'm not especially great at it, because it was not actually designed to be a front flipper. This is part of the construction, and I have this gigantic, like, 5mm stop pin in here. This is part of the construction of a traditional tactical knife, okay? Other knives where you will see that, are the 0640. Boom, has a little piece that sticks up here. You'll see that here with my Emerson CQC15. Boom, there's a little part that sticks out there. And you'll see the same here with this Emerson EX100. This is part of tactical knife design. You will have, just as a byproduct of the design of the knife and the lines, you will have a little nub that sticks out of there, right? And yeah, sure, being able to front flip it is an extra benefit, you know, and I can front flip this guy too, right? But it's not intentional. When you do start doing that intentionally, you start perverting the proportions, and I can tell you from experience as a designer, you end up sacrificing the locking surface, right? If you've got to have a piece that sticks out here, that rotates over here, how is that going to interact with your lock bar, right? Okay, so this is the perfect example, the RUCKUS, okay? So with this guy, it has to hit the lock bar up here. But then if I had also a section up here that was for, you know, like a regular flipper, now I've reduced the amount of surface area and potential area for my lock bar to interact with, right? And do I really need this thing to be a flipper, a front flipper, and have thumb studs? Like, dudes, where are they? I've got my gloves right here. I picked up some new gloves today, right? These are for my bug out bag and double as shooting gloves, right? Out of all of these, like, deployment methods, thumb stud is the only one that works. Let me see if I can actually get this to front. Okay, I can get it to front flip, but it's so much more inconvenient, right? And I know a lot of you who work use gloves, right? Let's look at the GRAZIOSO. Okay, flipper tab. Boom, easy. Do I need anything else in order to deploy this? No, I don't. Look at that. Boom. Super easy. So, I don't know. It's something that has bothered me for a long time, right? Because, like, there are fundamental good practices with knife design, right? You definitely want to use the best locking method available to you, right? And right now, without getting into potential, like, copyright issues, that's an axis bar style lock, a liner lock, or a frame lock. Supposedly, the compression lock copyright has expired, but from what I've heard, Spyderco can be, like, pretty litigious. So we're not going to step on those toes, or at least I'm not anytime soon, right? So that gives us 3 locking methodologies that really work out well. And there are certain fundamental factors that lead to good lockup, right? And the number 1 factor is triangulation, okay? You want to have as close to an equal triangle, right? 60 degree, 60 degree, 60 degree to get perfect lockup, right? Or you want it to be a straight line. Each one of these, so 180 degrees, okay? So from what this means is from, where can I, yeah, here we go. Grab the GRAZIOSO. So from the bottom of where the lock bar interacts with the blade through the center of the pivot to your stop pin, that should be 180 degrees. Or if your stop pin is back here, like it is on the RUCKUS, which you can see, I've got a big screw here that goes through the stop pin, okay? From where the lock bar interacts with the blade through the pivot to the stop pin, you want that to be as close to a 60-60-60 triangle as possible, okay? Or in the case of an access bar lock, you have from the axis, the crossbar, through the pivot to the stop pin. And if you look, boom, like there's a stop pin right there. So we really, there are very clear principles to getting like a good solid lockup. And when you start getting into like fidget factor bias knives, you start losing that. And then people get surprised. Oh, why doesn't my knife have a good lockup? Why does my knife not survive a spine whack test? It's not rocket science. It's actually really basic geometry. And I'm not the one who made up these rules, right? Like, realistically, I'm not. The godfather of knife design is the one who actually, like, pioneered this, or he literally wrote the book. Bob Trezzola, okay? And I can show you exactly where he talks about this. It's page 48. Right here. He talks about it. He talks exactly about it. The compression force on the triangle determines the strength of the locking mechanism, right? So if you look at Bob's stuff, man, he doesn't do like a ton of multiple deployment methods. You may get, a flipper and and thumb studs. That's it. Two. It's enough. It's enough. And you don't see Bob, the OG that he is. I'll just put that down there. You won't see Bob, the OG that he is, sitting here and obsessing over drop shuttiness. He won't, man. So, this is just a thing that has been kind of, in my opinion, shoved down all of our throats. And if a knife doesn't have drop shutty action and doesn't have, a ton of deployment methods, it's not a cool knife. YouTuber bullshit. I'm sorry, guys. That's kind of how I feel. The only time you're sitting there let me do over the top. Let me do over the back. Whatever, is when you're by yourself and you're only impressing yourselves. And that's cool. I'm not telling you don't spend your money the way you want to spend it. But I'm just saying, I wish that we would really sit here as an industry and kind of be a little bit, honest with ourselves that, it's only cool to us. It doesn't actually improve the functionality of the knife. And it's just something that has been marketed to us to sell more knives.